Today we're going to learn how to build this kind of intro inside of Camtasia. That's right, I said inside of Camtasia. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, welcome back. If you haven't checked out my website already, go ahead and check out learningdojo.ninja. Here you can find all of my previous blog posts and all of my training on XAPI and augmented reality, as well as like video tips and other things like that, Storyline and Captivate. You can also go to my templates and download templates for Articulate Storyline. You can download templates for XAPI, and then you can also get full courses from A to Z on Articulate Storyline 360, Adobe Captivate, XAPI Fundamentals, Articulate Rise, Custom SCORM, and HTML5 Video. But today we're going to be focusing on getting the most out of your Camtasia project and not even recording your screen, because most of the time when you think of Camtasia, people think of screen recordings, like recording my screen like I'm doing right now. But you can do so much more. You can do a lot of transitions, you can do a lot of intros, you can do a lot of animations as well. So the point of today is to help you get started with that kind of information, and then show you how to animate and show you how to use some of the masking and track mats and other things like that. So let's go ahead and get started. Right now, I just have a project pulled up here. So I'm going to go ahead and double click on that project. And inside of this project, I just have a Learning Dojo icon. So really just a square icon. You can use that however you want as well. Now you can zoom out by using your mouse wheel anywhere inside of the canvas here. If you needed to see more of the video, you can zoom out just by scrolling in and scrolling out. Now some of these keys are going to be different with a PC than they are with a Mac, so keep that in mind. I'll try to point out as many of those as possible, or I may just create a PC version of this as well. But let's go ahead and go back into Camtasia. The first thing that you want to do with your Camtasia project is save it. I already have this saved, so we're good here. Now, if you haven't worked with Camtasia already, the timeline is down at the bottom. This is where we can start timing up the animations and adding the custom animations to go from one point to the other point as well. I'm first of all going to change the project settings. So if you right click anywhere on the video area and you go into project settings, this is where you can change the dimensions of the video. If you wanted to go up to like a 4K video, you could do that, or stick with 1080p or 720 as well. You can also do an Instagram or face cover video, or if you wanted to target iPad or iPhone, you can do that as well. Or you can do a custom size. So keep that in mind. If you're making like a TikTok video or something like that, you may want to get the exact dimensions for TikTok and adjust them here. But for now, we're just going to stick with the 1080p. And so it's 1920 by 1080. I'm going to go ahead and select this drop down box, and this is the background color. So I can easily change this from black to a color like light gray or something like that. And I want to do that. So I'm just going to grab the color dial here, and I'm just going to drag into this gray area. That looks good to me. You can change the frame rate if you wanted to. So depending on your camera, if your camera records in a higher frame rate, you can record it in a higher frame rate, or you can create the project in a higher frame rate here. So I'm going to go ahead and select apply. And now we have our canvas there. Now the first thing I want to do is I want to come into my annotations. My annotations is where I can start to add shapes and I can start to add text and so forth. We're going to animate those squares like you saw, so they come in, and then we're going to have our logo pop on top of some of those squares as well. So we're going to be using a lot of the square shape here in the annotations. So I'm going to drag one of them on the stage here. And I'm going to go into my properties. Over on the right hand side is my properties. If you do not see your properties, you just click on the properties panel over on the right side here. Now the properties are important, especially when we're animating. So if you think of animation as changing from one set of properties to another set of properties. So right here, this is my current set of properties. So scale is 100%, opacity is 100%. My rotation on Z, Y, and X are all set to 0 at the moment. Position is set to 0.2, 89.8, and Z is set at 0. So these are properties for the initial state. Now, when I'm going to animate, those properties, or at least some of those properties, are going to change. If I wanted to animate it to zoom in, well, it's going to start out at 0 and then it's going to go up to 100% or 102 or something like that. That's really what animation is you have a set of properties on a shape and you're going to change it to these set of properties, and then what happens is the animation will basically take it from that point to the other point. And that's typically what's happened in animation. If you think of animation in the old days, you would have the keyframers that would go in and draw out the key frames of like the important parts of an animation. And then you would have the tweeners that would actually go in and animate in between those keyframes. That's how the name tween came into play, is because those were the people that took it from point A to point B. And that's really important when you think of animation. You're going from point A with all of these properties to point B with all of these properties. And if you keep that in mind, all you really have to do is change properties on point A and then point B, and then you have your animation. Camtasia takes care of it for you. And then there's things like how fast does it go? Does it bounce when it comes in? We're going to cover all of that here. I'm going to go back into here and I'm going to make sure that the shape is actually even. Right now it's set to 240 by 180. I'm going to unlock that because I don't want it to stay proportional when I start to resize it here. Let's go ahead and just up this to about 400 by 400. This is how tall I want the shape to be. And I'm going to make sure that it's centered in the middle. And then I'm going to rotate this as well. So I'm going to come up to the rotation, the Z rotation, and we're going to make this look more like a diamond here. All right, so we have our first shape created. We can go ahead and duplicate this if we wanted to. And we want to create that kind of expanded, one shape comes in and then like a hole in that shape comes in and then another shape comes in. So we're going to just have this kind of go one after the other. So for now, what I want to do is I want to actually take this shape and I want to get this one animation right. Because if I get this one shape animation right, everything actually is a lot easier afterwards. So keep that in mind. I'm going to add an animation, and if you come into the animation section, there's a lot of default animations. And if I take those and I apply those animations to this shape, what happens is it sets the point A, like I was talking about, and the point B for me, and it just does it for me. So it changes the properties that needs to change, the opacity, or so forth. Now, if I don't know what those are, or if I want something a little bit different than this, then I can use the custom animation. So I'm going to come up to custom and just drag and drop that here. Now on your timeline, you can scroll into your timeline or scroll out by holding down the command button and using your cursor wheel on your mouse. Or you can do the opposite way to scroll out. I use this all the time to scroll in and scroll out, so keep that in mind. But on a PC, I think it's control that you would use control to zoom in and zoom out as well. So we have these two dots on our animation. This is point B. Where is it going to end up? And right now, this is exactly where we want it to end up. But we want it to be different on point A. So I'm going to click that point A dot, and this is where I'm going to change the properties of how it's going to start. I'm going to come over to the properties, and I'm going to change the scale down to 1%. Now, I can't go to 0 for some reason with Camtasia. It only allows me to go to 1, so I'm going to keep it at 1 here. So the tween automatically happens for me. So notice how this tween comes up and it just kind of bounces. Now the bounce is actually what's called an easing. How fast does it go at the very beginning? How fast does it go at the very end? Does it bounce? Does it just come in really fast and then slow down? That's what's called easing. So if you right click on this animation, and on that animation, if you go to animation easing, you can see that the default is set to spring. If we switch this to exponential in and out, notice how it doesn't do the bounce, but it just kind of comes in and slows down at the end. And that's exactly what we want for this initial one. For the other ones right before the logo is about to come in, we're going to set that to kind of bounce a little bit more. But for this one, this is great. I'm also going to change this color. And so you can come into the color properties by going into the annotation properties here. And if you set a theme, you could actually use your custom theme as well. And that's a completely different video that I'll be covering down the road. But I'm going to come into the fill here. And if you go into the fill, this is where you can kind of pick your color. I'm going to choose kind of a Learning Dojo color. Let me make this a little bit lighter. There we go. I think that looks great. I'm going to have this come in and it's looking good there. Now I'm going to go to point A here. Oh, it's also, notice how it kind of initially started out as white. That's because point A I have to change this because I have an animation. Point A had a white color and point B had a blue color. So you can actually change the colors as well. But I'm going to copy this blue color and then go over to point A and make sure that that has the same color as well, just so we don't get a color change there. There we go. That looks great. Now what I want to do from here is I want to have the other shape that's kind of making a hole in this shape, and I want this to come in a little bit after this first shape here. As I scroll out here, I'm going to copy this shape and paste it. Now this is exactly the same. So you can see here with this top one selected, if I just kind of move my cursor and this playhead out, you can see that that shape is going to slowly go behind the previous shape, and then it's eventually going to cover it. And I think that's great. I might want to time it out a little bit more, but that's exactly what I'm wanting right there. Is it to, as soon as that kind of stops, this one keeps going there. Now, what you can do though to create that hole in that previous shape, and so it has that kind of one after the other effect, is you can use track mats. Now, track mats are a new feature in Camtasia 2020, I believe. And so if you have an earlier version to Camtasia, you may not be able to get this exactly to work. So keep that in mind. But it is a great feature if you have Camtasia 2020 or 2021. It is a great feature to use here. So I'm going to right click over here and I'm going to go to alpha invert. Now alpha will basically take anything only show anything within that shape. And so anything below it will show, and then anything, you know, outside of that shape will not show. But alpha invert does the opposite. So anything on that shape, it just kind of makes a hole. And so that shape now becomes a window, or it makes that shape below it have a hole in there. And that's what we get this, that's how we get this effect here. So now if I kind of look at that, you can see that it just kind of scrolls in, and there we go. And in fact, you see that there's still kind of a little blue line here. I may want this to go beyond 100%, just slightly on the top one. And so the scale, let's up this to like 101. There we go. Now it completely disappears. Okay, so we have that effect coming in. Now that we have that effect, we can actually duplicate this effect and kind of space it out and have that come in one after the other, so we have several kind of coming in at the same time. So it's a really cool effect. And so the way that you can do that is by grouping it, so selecting both of them and then going to group, and then now I can just kind of space it out. But I have one problem, is this is still a track mat, and if I double click into that group, this is a track mat as well. So now I have two track mats, so which is fine, but I'm going to close that group and I'm going to uncheck this track mat. I don't need that one on the main timeline anymore. I just need it in that group. What I can do now is copy and paste this group. And notice how one starts to come in, and then I have another one as soon as it hits this group start to come in as well. And I can have that come in a little bit earlier, just so we have kind of one after the other. And you can see that effect comes in right about there, which I like that effect a lot. So I'm going to copy that and I'm going to paste that and kind of space that out as well. Maybe have that come a little earlier. There we go. I usually take my cursor and the playhead and I move it back and forth so I can get it exactly right. Sometimes it takes a little patience and kind of moving it a little bit, or even tweaking it, going into the properties and adjusting it to specific numbers as well. So it takes some practice to do these animations, but you can, once you do them, you can get a lot of cool effects out of them. All right, so I think this is looking good. And then what we want to do is at the end, we want those final two squares to come in and kind of bounce in, and then have our logo pop in after that. So we're ready to move on to that one next. Okay, so now let's go ahead and go into our annotation. We're going to grab another square here. This square is going to be white, and I'm going to adjust this to be 400 by 400, just like our last one. So let's also adjust the rotation. And so let's make sure this is kind of placed right on top of there. All right, so I want the animation as well. So I'm going to come into animation. I'm going to drag the custom one, and this is where the ending point is going to be. I want to, on this point right here, I want to have this set to 1%. So this is going to animate in. We're going to change the timing here in a second, so don't worry about the timing. But we're going to have this animate in, but we're also going to have this spring in. So I'm going to right click, go to animation easing, and go to spring. So now I get that nice springing effect. It's going to bounce in and kind of settle in place. Now I want a similar thing with another one, but I want this second one to be blue. So I'm going to change the color on the properties here, and I'm going to get that nice kind of Learning Dojo blue color. There we go. So I want that one to come in, but I want this one to be a little bit smaller than the other one. So I'm going to change this. Let's go to point B, and I'm going to change this to be 380 by 380. Let's go a little smaller, so 360 by 360. Okay, so we're going to have both of these kind of bounce in, one after the other. We'll change the timing here in a second. And then we're going to have something else. We're going to have these spin in opposite directions. And as soon as they go into place, that's when we're going to have our logo pop up. So we're doing a couple different things, and you can add on as many animations as you want to. You can't really overlap these animation arrows. You have to have one after the other. You can change several different properties in those arrows. So if something's changing during that animation, and if it's a scale and a rotation, you could do that. And so you don't have to add another arrow. But for now, we want this to kind of pop in, spin, and then have the logo actually come in. So I'm going to go into my custom animation, just drag this. We'll get one of them just right, and then we'll go ahead and adjust the other. I'm going to adjust the timing on this. And so you can see right here, this is how long I want my rotation to be. And I'm going to say that it's going to start here, but on point B, this is where it's going to end up. It's going to rotate into place. So I'm going to take my Z rotation, and I'm going to rotate it almost all the way around, and I want it to go into just a normal square at that point. So I'm going to take my animation again, my new animation, and I'm going to make this actually the same thing. So now I'm going to have this, but I'm going to have this go the opposite way. So you can see that this is going to the left. We want the other one to go to the right. So I want this one to go to the right. Let's go ahead and just paste this, just rotate it. And I hold down the shift button so it kind of snaps into place as well. So I don't have to get it exactly right. But now let's take a look at this. It's happening quite fast. And so I want to take a look at the numbers here. So it's starting out at 135. This one is starting out at 135 too. This one goes to -90, and this one goes to -180. I'm going to try this one to go to, or actually both of them to go to -90. That might actually have them go simultaneously. Let's try this again here. And I think it might be because it's the spring is kind of throwing it off. I'm going to adjust this to exponential out and in. And let's try that. Oh, they're both going the same direction. Let's adjust this. I'm going to remove that animation actually. So let's go ahead and remove that animation, and let's add another animation here. So the white one is going to the right, and then we want the blue one to go to the left. So let's try that one more time. All right. There we go. Now they're going in opposite directions, and they kind of end up there. Now we can try to add that spring and see if that makes it a little bit better. Yeah, I like that a lot. And in fact, I may need to change the colors here because I just realized that my blue logo is going to pop in. And so I may want to have the blue background, white, and then my blue logo on top of that. So I'm going to come into this one, and I'm going to change this one to, I'm going to copy this hex value right here. But I'm going to change this one to white. I'm going to come into this one, and I'm going to just paste that hex value to the blue. So now I've just kind of swapped out, and I may need to go in and swap out from the very beginning here. Actually, I kind of like how it changes the colors there. I'm going to keep it like that. So it's like changes colors as it starts to spin there. Now I'm going to have my logo pop up kind of at the end here. And again, we'll figure out the timing here in a second. But I'm going to go into my media library, and I'm going to grab my icon, and I'm going to adjust my icon here. And I'm going to have this kind of be a little bit smaller. And notice that the blue is a little bit off. When you actually get these colors now, you can go through, and it's probably easier if I mark down the blue color and everything, But I could come in here to the blue color and I can get the color, the exact color, so it's matching there. So with this little eyedropper. So there we go. I want it to spin, and then I want this one to pop up. And this one we've done already, so we can just go into the custom animation, drag and drop that custom animation, have that at point A all the way down to 0, and let's have it actually even rotated slightly as well. And then point B is where it will come into play. All right, so we have that kind of in place. We're gonna go ahead and see how it looks, and then we're going to adjust the timing here. So I'm gonna hit play. That's looking good. We have those bouncing up, and we could probably even do this a little bit faster. So let's adjust the timing on this. Oh, maybe that was a little too fast. All right, so now we need to bring this in and have the rotation happen pretty quickly right after that animation finishes. And then we'll have the icon kind of pop up towards the end of those rotation animations. All right, I'm liking that a lot. So let's play this from the beginning. And there we go. So we have this intro animation, and then we could have like a fade or something come out, or we could have it kind of pop back out, like spring back out as well. There's a lot that you can do here. But the key is I spent all this time to build this animation. How do I actually reuse it for several different videos? Well, this is where you can actually come in and add it to your library, and you can set it as a template. So there's a lot of things that you can do here. I'm going to go ahead and walk you through how to do that right now. What I can do is I can select all of these and I can group them, and you can have groups within groups as well. So that's not a problem, but I'm going to go into group, and this is going to be one overall group. Now I'm going to rename this group. And so come up here, right clicking, and go to rename group. And we're going to call this one Learning Dojo, or just LD intro. And again, I may want to clean up kind of the what happens at the very end here, because right now things just kind of go away. But for the sake of time, I mean, it would just be the opposite, going from point A to where it is now to point B, going back to 0, basically. So I'm going to let you do that one, but I'm going to exit out of this group. And now I'm going to right click and go to add to library. Now what happens with this is when I click on add to library is it adds it to my default library, and you can choose which library you want it to go to. But now if I start a new project, I'm going to save this one, go into a new project here. And if I start a new project and I go into my library, look at that. I have that intro right there. It doesn't have that gray background, but that's okay because we can change the gray background pretty easily. But you can see now I have that new intro that I could use in any project that I wanted to. If you set up your entire project as a template, you could even come in here and go File, Save Project as a template, and then you can have like placeholder video and other things like that. So Camtasia is pretty flexible. You can do a lot with this, and hopefully this gives you an introduction on how you can go beyond just screen recordings and start to create these animations inside of Camtasia. It's all about timing and adjusting the properties and doing different things like that. If you want to learn more, go ahead and check out my website at learningdojo.ninja. Here you can check out previous blog posts. You can also download templates, and there will be more Camtasia templates coming soon. And then you can get access to courses on Articulate Storyline 360, Adobe Captivate, XAPI Fundamentals, Articulate Rise, Custom Scorm as well. But I also wanted to point this out. If you need some inspiration or just want to grab intros and outros and other things like this, you can go to TechSmith Assets, library.techsmith.com, and you can sign up for an account here. It does cost, I think, about $199 a year, but you get access to over 20 million professional assets for Camtasia. This includes intros, this includes themes, this includes outros, motion graphics, and other things. So this is a good resource if you don't want to spend all the time creating the custom intros and outros. But hopefully this is useful if you wanted to do that and create your own custom one, and how you can get started with that. Thanks everyone. I'll see you in the next video.